or deed of trust and agree to pay the debt. Identify the methods of foreclosure in which can be used in Illinois. Non-judicial foreclosure, judicial foreclosure, strict foreclosure. The only method applied in Illinois is judicial foreclosure. Although Illinois doesn't have the statutory right of redemption, it does have what similar statutory right? The statutory right of reinstatement. As a general guideline, each discount point paid to the lender will increase the lender's yield by what percent? January 8th of 1%. Identify the types of institutions in the primary mortgage market. Thrifts, savings associations, commercial banks, insurance companies, credit unions, pension funds, endowment funds, investment group financing, mortgage banking companies. Identify the types of institutions in the secondary mortgage market. The Federal National Mortgage Association Fannie Mae, the Government National Mortgage Association Ginnie Mae, the Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation Freddie Mac. Identify the various financing techniques available for purchasing real estate. Straight loans, amortized loans, adjustable rate mortgages. What are the requirements and qualifications for a conventional loan? At least 20% down, a good credit score. What are the requirements and qualifications for an FHA loan? What are the requirements and qualifications for a VA loan? Explain how the Federal Reserve System maintains a favorable economic climate. Decreasing reserve requirements lowers rates, increases money for loans, stimulates market increases inflation. Increasing reserve requirements raises rates, decreases money flow, slows economy and purchases, slows inflation. From which two sources are profitable returns realized on a loan? Finance charges, recurring income, interest. Under the Truth in Lending Act, Regulation Z, the finance charge disclosure must include which items? Loan fees, finder's fees, service charges, points, interest, annual percentage rate APR. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act prohibits lenders and others who grant or arrange credit to consumers from discriminating against applicants on the basis of what? Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, marital status, age, dependence on public assistance. Identify the types of leasehold estates. Estate for years, estate from period to period, estate at will, estate at severance. Identify the requirements of a valid lease. Capacity, legal objective, offer, acceptance, consideration, memory tip, cloak. If a tenant defaults on the payment of rent, the landlord has which two options? A licensee renting a property built before 1978 must disclose what? Any possible lead-based paint or related hazards. What activities require a leasing agent license? Leasing or renting residential real property, collecting rent for residential real property, attempting, offering, or negotiating to lease, rent, or collect rent for the use of residential real property. According to the Illinois Real Estate License Act of 2000, what are the limitations on landlords who pay referral fees to tenants? Identify the elements of a management agreement. What are the key functions of a property manager? Achieve the objectives of the property owners, generate income for the property owners, preserve and/or increase the value of the investment property. Identify possible sources of a property management business. Corporate owners, apartment buildings, owners of small rental residential properties, homeowners associations, investment syndicates, trusts, owners of office buildings. What are the considerations the property manager takes into account when establishing rental rates? When the occupancy level of an apartment or office building exceeds what percent should the manager investigate the rental market to determine whether a rent increase is warranted? 95%. In Illinois, the security deposit must be put in a non-interest-bearing account except in what situation? If the property is residential and 25 units or more, interest must be paid to the tenants. Identify the alternative risk management techniques utilized by property managers. Avoid, control, transfer, retain, memory tip, factor. Identify the basic characteristics of value. Demand, utility, scarcity, transferability. Identify the different approaches to value used by appraisers. The sales comparison approach, the cost approach, the income approach. Identify the different methods used to determine reproduction or replacement cost. Square foot method, unit in place method, quantity survey method, index method. A comparative market analysis is based on what factors? Recently closed properties, properties currently on the market, properties that did not sell. The sales comparison approach to value is determined by comparing what factors? Property rights, financing concessions, market conditions, conditions of sale, market conditions since the date of sale, location or area preference, physical features and amenities. Identify the steps required to reach a value through the cost approach to value method. Identify the different types of depreciation. Physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, external obsolescence. Identify the steps required to reach a value through the income approach to value method. What is the difference between gross rent multiplier and gross income multiplier? GRM is used for 1 to 4 unit residential properties and GIM is used for 5 or more units. GRM is calculated with monthly rent. Sales price divided by gross monthly rent equals GRM, while GIM is calculated with gross annual income. Sales price divided by gross annual income equals GIM. Identify the types of zoning. Bulk zoning, aesthetic zoning, incentive zoning. Explain the difference between variances and conditional use permits. The Civil Rights Act of 1866 provides protection for which protected class? Race. The Fair Housing Act of 1968 provides protection for which protected class? Race, color, religion, national origin. The Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 provides protection for which protected class? Sex. The Fair Housing Amendments Act of 1988 provides protection for which protected class? Disability, familial status. The Illinois Human Rights Act provides protection for which protected class? Race, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, marital status, disability, familial status. List the exemptions allowed in the Fair Housing Act. Identify the basic environmental hazards a real estate agent should be aware of in order to protect a client's interests. Asbestos, lead, radon gas, formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, mold. In what year were the use of lead and asbestos both banned as building materials? 1978. In Illinois, if the Department of Public Health finds a lead hazard on a property, how many days does the property owner have to mitigate the condition? 90 days. What is the EPA established safe level of radon in a home? 4 PCIL. How can real estate licensees avoid liability with environmental issues? By becoming familiar with common environmental problems in the area, by looking for signs of environmental contamination, advising an environmental audit if you suspect contamination, not giving advice on environmental issues. In what circumstances does the Illinois Radon Awareness Act require sellers to provide buyers of residential real estate a pamphlet entitled Radon Testing Guidelines for Real Estate along with the Illinois Disclosure of Information on Radon Hazards form? All sellers of residential real estate must provide this form. Identify the types of closing a licensee might encounter in a real estate transaction. Face-to-face closing, closing in escrow. According to the Mortgage Disclosure Improvement Act, what specific time frames is the closing subject to? RESPA does not apply in what type of settlements? Explain the statutory or banking year method for proration. The yearly charge is divided by 360 year or 12 months of 30 days each. Explain the 365 days a year method for proration. The yearly charge is divided by 365 to determine the daily charge. Then the actual number of days in the proration period is determined, and this number is multiplied by the daily charge. Explain the statutory month method for proration. The yearly charge is divided by 12 to determine a monthly amount. The monthly charge is then divided by the actual number of days in the month in which the closing occurs. The final number is the daily charge for that month. What type of real estate closings must be reported to the Internal Revenue Service? Land, including air and space, an inherently permanent structure, including any residential, commercial, or industrial building, a condominium unit and its appurtenant fixtures and common elements, shares in a cooperative housing corporation. Identify the major trade organizations that